Good morning. Since we finished Coffee and Catch Up, we'd been going since March 2020 when we leapt into the space of Zoom, and we felt that it was really important because there was a lot of stuff that was not clear. There were issues coming up all the time. There were government grants, so there was a big demand from business on the ground to find out what was going on, how to get hold of money, how to deal with the situations that were coming up. But I think it's still important that what we are trying to do now is keep you updated about government policy, because that does affect you, local policy, and then some timely tips on what things you really need to be focusing on now in order to make sure you don't make a mistake or get anything wrong or miss out on something or miss a key date. So I want to just very briefly talk about macroeconomics, because I know it's a bit boring and we hear about it endlessly on the news. But as far as it goes, the government borrowing in May was 24 billion, which fantastically was 19 billion less than last May, which was 43, the highest borrowing in May on record. However, the picture is we're now 99% borrowing against gross domestic product, which means we've got an awful lot of money borrowed, 300 billion plus. And what that's going to do is drive the government policy. They're going to need to start to tax us to get this money back. We can't carry this debt on forever. So the fact that we've got a 300 billion pound debt, and this has all gone into the economy, you know where it's gone: Bounceback loans, it's gone into furlough, and all those other schemes that have come through. So a lot of money's been spent, but now we're getting to a situation, we lost 10% of our turnover last year, we're making it up this year, and the world and Europe thinks that we're going to be somewhere around where we were economically, gross domestic product wise, by the end of this year, where we were before we started. So that's the sort of the look forward. The big worry that everyone is now talking about is inflation, because if inflation starts to creep up, then salaries will start to be pushed, and then this whole cycle drives. I'm old enough to remember when, we had interest rates of 16 and 17%. So it can happen. I've seen it happen. I borrowed money at that rate. So, it can happen again, but we really need to be careful. So inflation is the threat to our economy and all of our prosperity and our business growth. We want steady growth, not a little boom at the end of this year and then a bust in 2022. So really keep an eye on inflation, make sure that doesn't start to drive wages, because costs are going up. We've all seen you can't get stuff. There's shortage of building materials. There's shortage of other things. Energy prices are going up. So we have to be careful, keep an eye on inflation, all of us, just to see what's happened. That will determine what happens to borrowing rates and government policy. So looking forward, what is the government going to do? They've shipped all this money into the economy in the form of furlough and ARG loans and bounce back loans, which we talked about. It did used to go to the local enterprise partnerships. It now seems there's a change of policy and it's going through the local authorities. So Dorset and Bournemouth are our local authorities, and they've handled it very differently. So all that money's been spent. They have spent everything, and I'll come on to what they've spent it on in a minute, but there's due to be another 3 or 4 million pounds for each of our authorities coming in July. And I think that's going to be targeted rather than just spread fairly evenly throughout the business community. So there's going to be a little bit more money July to Christmas, but that's going to be the end, I think, of the majority of government support we've had. And so that really is the situation. We now need to be looking at where future funding's coming from. There will be what's called the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. That's going to come into being next year. There's been a bit of a pilot this year, but next year will be but that's only £1.5 billion, sorry. So we're going to be basically looking at finding out ways that we can help you to increase your profitability and grow without the government system we had. And probably worse than that, we're going to have a tax burden raised. And a lot of you also have debts that you didn't have before. So that's the sort of the outlook. We need to be self-sufficient. We need to be looking at ways to get better at doing things, be more digital, be more aware, and that's our way forward. If you've taken out a loan, a Bounceback loan particularly, you have got a chance now in the next couple of 3 weeks really to change the terms of your loan. The original loans were granted on a 6-year payback period. You have got a chance to take a holiday or extend the whole loan to 10 years. Again, this is going to have to be done in the next few weeks. So have a look at your Bounceback loans, have a look at your tax situation, and if you need settled status, then by the end of June. So what's happening locally? Bournemouth and Dorset had a very different take on what they did with their money. Dorset wanted to spread it evenly throughout the business community, didn't have any big particular plans or specific target areas to go for. And so they have spent all their money without going into a special grants program. They're hopeful in July and August they might look at targeting some areas of the economy in Dorset which they feel have been adversely affected, which is events, maybe hospitality, but that's to be decided and we don't know how that's going to work yet. BCP took a very different view and they put £3 million aside, which they put in a fund called the Bounceback Challenge Fund. And then a lot of businesses bid into that pot for grants between £15,000 and £70,000. There have been some fantastic projects that have come out of that. There's a plan ahead to go away for a surf lagoon over by the airport at Herne. There's some interesting stuff being done on diversity, those kind of things. There've been some business support programs. BCP gave nearly 700,000 to the support organisations. We're going to be running a scheme to identify businesses with the potential to scale, and that will start now in the next month or so. We've got a pop-up business support event where we'll be on site at the college and BU to offer business support for students wanting to start up. So there's lots of stuff going on. The Dorset Chamber have got a project where you can get some time with a really high-end consultant to help you to direct your business towards growth. So a lot of things have happened to specifically target businesses with new ideas, and it was all about innovation and making Bournemouth a better place to do business, really. So a lot happened there, and Dorset not so much, but we're hopeful that something might happen in the near future. On the HR side, I think we're all getting towards a situation now where people are struggling with the changes in working, and we now really need, I think, to look at our HR and how we deal with our staff. Remember now, at the end of this month again, the government's paying less into the furlough pot, so only 70% from the government, and then in September it's going to end. It has resulted, rather strangely, in the fact that it's hard to recruit people. There seem to be, particularly in the hospitality industry, great difficulty recruiting chefs, front of house staff, and any sort of opportunity. We've got advertising at the moment for 2 people to help with another project. Very hard to get applicants. So counterintuitively, are people staying on furlough and not wanting to work, or are there just not the skilled people available to do the jobs? But it's surprising. You'd think there'd be a plethora of people looking for work, but it's odd that there isn't. And it's definitely, if you're looking for new people, you need to get out there and look very hard, but make sure your staff are going to come back ready to work in September, because it'll be a culture shock. And maybe we'll go for a hybrid working environment. Maybe an office is now only for collaborative working. So a lot of changes, but make sure you talk to your staff. Make sure you communicate with everyone. Tell them what's happening, tell them what your plans are, and make sure you keep them on board, because getting new staff may well be harder than you think. So that's something to really bear in mind. So other than that, really concentrate on your business. Try not to stay in the bubble we're in. Remember, the world is carrying on, however you might feel isolated from it, and get out there and talk to people, maybe even meet people in person now as we start to get back towards that. As the Growth Hub, we're not sure whether we ought to be having meetings, and we'd value anyone's opinion on whether face-to-face is valuable or whether Zoom is good enough. And we do interviews on Zoom now and on Teams. I think it's a really valuable tool, but I think we're all missing face-to-face. So hopefully after July, we'll start to get back to being face-to-face with people and perhaps re-emerging from the swamp that is our house. So thank you for listening. There you go.